I think we're recording. So welcome, folks, and thanks for joining our latest office hours. Yeah, we had the first one last time, which I think was very well received. And some feedback from folks was, oh, how are you going to top that? Well, we're up to the challenge today. Yeah, so we have a great agenda with, some Sigstore Python, Java Sigstore library, and also a look at how folks are using Sigstore at Oh My Posh. Just before we get started, no slides today, but I do have a announcement to share, which I'm going to share this tab. Yeah, really pleased today. We announced that we will be having the very first in-person Sigstore event, which will be SigstoreCon as a co-located event with KubeCon North America. So the call for papers is now open, and that stays open for a few weeks till August 19th. And yeah, please get in your talks. We're looking for lots of kind of integration stories and user case studies, and just anything that will help people understand how to adopt Sigstore and how they might consider using it and learn from each other. And yeah, do go ahead if you are planning to be at KubeCon, do look at registering for the event as well. And if folks are interested in sponsoring, there's some options for that in addition. Any questions about SigstoreCon? Okay, with that, let's get straight into the demos. And yeah, pleased to welcome William Woodruff of Trail of Bits, who'll be talking about the GitHub action for Sigstore Python. So go ahead, William.
Great. All right. Well, hello, everybody. So I'm going to try to make this demo, since it's just a GitHub action, I will try to just basically share my screen a couple times and show how to configure it and what some of the outputs look like. But otherwise, I'm happy to answer questions about it. So without further ado, I'll show my screen. All right. So the first thing I wanted to share was, so just for context, Sigstore Python is one of the implementations of the Sigstore sort of client side. So it's a Python command line and library for signing and verifying sort of arbitrary inputs. We built it originally for specifically for Python packages, but because Sigstore is sort of generic over any input, it can be used to sign and verify anything, including anything produced by other clients in the ecosystem. And so with that as context, the GitHub action is obviously just a GitHub action wrapper around this client library that we've built. And just to show what you could do with it, I'm just showing the self-tests here for the CI for that GitHub action. So we have a couple of self-tests that runs on every commit, where it basically signs itself and signs a few other artifacts and makes sure that all the functionality that we've configured or exposed as options work correctly. So here you can see we have 4 different self-tests, and you can see some of the things that are produced with each CI run. So you'll see that we take advantage of GitHub's summary support for rendering markdown summaries for each action. So every time you run a Sigstore GitHub action Python run, it'll generate a little markdown summary for you and produce these like foldable outputs that will show the actual standard output of the command that was run and standard error of the command that was run. So here's the signature output, here's the verification output. It's actually a bug. Okay, just this is also in like alpha, so there's going to be some bugs. In this case, I broke the rendering here, but that gives a rough idea of what's going on like the action summary side. In terms of actually configuring the action itself, we've designed it with sort of ease of use in mind. And so in theory, in order to start signing with this GitHub action using the built-in OpenID Connect identity that's part of every GitHub action workflow, all you have to do is add this ID token right permission. And then, for example, signing this artifact, this dummy artifact, is as simple as using the Sigstore Python action, and then just passing inputs with the name of the file. And that's pretty much all you need. Everything else will be done automatically for you. You can, of course, do some other things as well. You can enable the staging instance instead. So if you want to test using Sigstore's staging rather than production services, you can use globs instead of enumerating every file. And then also you can upload the signature and certificate artifacts as either run assets or as release assets for the workflow. So if you run the workflow, for example, like publishing event on GitHub Actions, you can automatically upload those signature and certificate files to it and have them be connected to the release in the UI, which I think is pretty neat. Yeah, and then to move more just into sort of the general things that we have available is there's quite a lot of configuration options. Like I said, the goal is to make the happy path as simple as possible. So you should almost never need to touch most of these. But if you are sort of hacking on Sigstore itself and you want to make sure that different things are integrating correctly in the ecosystem, you could, for example, override the recore URL or the full scale URL, or change the pub key to something different, and et cetera, to test out to make sure that things are either failing or succeeding in the way that is expected. So we have quite a few things here, such as different uploading options, different verification options. Yeah. By the way, the links for all this are in the meeting notes for this week. So if the text is too small or this is too fast, please just go through it on your own. Please let me know if you have any questions about it. And then finally, just to show that we're actually, so this is, like I said, this is an early alpha, and we're still working on features for it, especially since Sigstore Python itself is not stable yet. But to show that we're actually dog fooding it and have a sense of like what we expect it to actually look like. Here is a third-party repository to audit that I separately work on, and here's how we're actually using the action as it currently stands. So like I said, it really is as simple as just pass in the uses as normal for any GitHub action, and then pass in the inputs you want to assign, and then the action will take care of everything else automatically. And with that, that's pretty much all I have. Like I said, there's not a ton of demo because it is just a CI action, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, as well as provide further links or resources people would like. So thank you. The question is, are attestations on the roadmap? Could you qualify what do you mean by attestations? Like testing that the integrity of like the workflow run, or basically what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I guess exactly. So, like a salsa attestation that maybe contains information about the workflow run.
Yes, yeah, I think that. So the goal is we have a verification mode as well that's supported in the CI, and so the idea is that as we add features to the underlying Sigstore Python implementation, we will expose those to the CI as well, and attestations are on the roadmap there. And then, sorry, there was one more question. The question was, can you show the results of the action of the UI, show action outputs / release artifacts? Yes, so I'm not sure if I demoed this correctly. Basically, let me actually share my screen once more. Hopefully this will answer the question. So essentially, when you run the action, we do take advantage of GitHub's support for like custom UI elements via Markdown. So every time you run the action, we will produce these sort of Markdown summaries that show the action outputs. So I'm sorry, I don't understand what you mean by present.
No, sorry, I think I like missed this when you presented this UI thing.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, this will expose the outputs, and then we also have separate features for adding them in ways that are accessible via GitHub's API, such as release artifacts and individual workflow run artifacts.
Seth has a follow-up. He says, I'm interested in what you meant about workflow run attestation. Is that something that can be done currently, i.e. who ran the workflow? Is that Azra or William?
I mean, I guess it's kind of targeted to me, so I will answer. So yeah, Seth, you can extract like all that information about like who ran the workflow and like what triggered the workflow, and so on, what commit, etc., from the GitHub context of the workflow. So in our model, we like package all this information up into a salsa attestation, and sign that with the OIDC, similar signing to what William showed. So I can just drop a link over there. I guess it requires trusting that your builder actually extracted that context correctly, which is why it's important to have like a concept of a trusted builder. But I'll drop links.
Thank you. Yeah, the other aspect of that is right now we're set up to, with URLib 3, we're set up to essentially have the workflow get triggered, but it'll be gated on a review. Because you can have reviewable environment runs with GitHub Actions. And so that's kind of our gating mechanism. And I'm wondering if you could somehow capture the reviewer of that environment run as well, because obviously the trigger might be something different than the person who actually allowed the run to execute.
Yeah, that's really interesting. If you drop a link to like some reference over there, I would love to sort of see what that is, because it'd be really nice to include that.
Yeah, I can share something.
I also did just want to mention, so most of the work that I just demonstrated has been done in tandem with my coworker, Alex Cameron, who is on Australian time. And so I just wanted to acknowledge he did a great deal of work here and did a fantastic job of it. So I can forward questions to him as well, but obviously he's not awake right now.
Yeah, and William, you refer to it as an alpha. So do you have projects using it, or what's kind of the next steps you have in mind for yourself and Alex?
Yeah. So we have a couple things in mind. So one is we want to stabilize Sigstore Python itself before we probably offer a stable release of the action, just because we don't want to imply that the action is using an underlying stable implementation. So that's one. Another is, so we do currently have pip audit is using it in CI for releases, just as sort of like a smoke test. Other than that, I believe pip API is also currently using it, which is Dustin's bindings for pip's internal API. And there may be a couple other projects that are using it, but they're all using it under the sort of expectation that it's not currently ready for prime time.
Awesome. But yeah, no, that's very cool. And echoing Seth, we're jealous. We want it on more projects. Cool. Any other questions for William, or comments even? Okay, yeah, now we'll leave anything else, please hit us up in the chat. But yeah, no, thanks for that great demo. Okay, so moving on from Python to Java. Last time we had a look at the Rust library for Sigstore, and this week Apu's joining us to show us the equivalent in the Java world. So over to you, Apu.
Hey, so I'm Apu. I'm at Google, working on this Java client. So some of this stuff is not committed into the repository, because when Tracy asked me to do this, I thought I was ready, but then I made a bunch of changes last night to make it actually fully work with verification. So I work on this with Patrick Flynn, who's at ChainGuard, who I think is on vacation somewhere. So I'll be doing the presentation. Let's see, maybe this is enough. So here is a simple project, doesn't really do anything. It has a reference to Sigstore Java 1.0 or 0.10 snapshot, which is on my machine because some of this stuff is not committed. Here's some helpers to do like JSON, hex, and SHA-256 stuff that you need. So with signing, this is just like a silly debug statement, and the key entry point, or the main entry point, is the keyless signer. And this builder for prod kind of configures everything that you would need to talk to the production public good instance of Sigstore. And then, since this is Java, I wrote everything as a builder. If you're not familiar with Java, a lot of people do this. I'm creating this temporary directory so I can save my output files. Then here I create a, kind of a sample artifact. I write some nonsense into it. And here is kind of the main signing call. So what this does is packages the, is everyone here mostly familiar with Sigstore? It creates a public private key pair, talks to full CO, gets their certificate, signs the artifact, sends all this information to Recore, and then verifies that everything is working as expected. I can elaborate if someone's not familiar with Sigstore, but I feel like a lot of people have talked about this. So this returns kind of a structured result, and this result contains the digest of the artifact you signed. The cert path is a Java construct for a certificate chain, signature, and the recore entry, which is kind of this, again, another structured object with all the information that recore returns. So we can kind of run this and see what happens. It's going to probably trigger a browser. Let's just go. So I log in with Google. Tells me to close this. It runs through and produces the output. So this right here is kind of just the signature that I generated in the keyless signer. And then here's the certificate chain, which is the full CO root, and then the full CO instance intermediate, and then the certificate that represents my public key. And here's kind of the record body expanded out into JSON. This is standard Sigstore stuff. And this output directory is where I've stored all the what was it? Sigstore. And so you can look at the cert. There's your PEM encoded cert chain. You can look at the artifact if you want. It just says I'm an artifact, and here's a UUID, because there's no new line in there. And then the signature is just a bunch of bytes, so it's binary, but we can convert it to base 64. And there you have the signature. So now that we have all this, we can go and verify it. This is the stuff I kind of wrote recently and is not committed, so you won't really be able to use this yet. But thanks, Tracy, for forcing me to do all this. So we can change this to the directory that we were using here. And then we kind of pull in all the files we need. We have to create a source path type from the PEM encoded certificate, and then we create we recalculate the artifact digest from the artifact. Again, the keyless verifier is something that verifies a keyless signature from Sigstore. We're connecting it to public good. You'll notice the naming isn't consistent because, again, I was doing this last night. And here we just try to do this thing called verify claims, which goes through and verifies that the full CO certificate is valid, that the recore entry is valid, that the signature occurred during the validity period of the certificate, and like signatures are valid, and so on and so on. If we run this, says the signing cert is valid, the signing cert SCT, the sign certificate timestamp is valid. This must be some debugging stuff that I accidentally left in there. It checks to recore entry is valid and that the signature is valid. The real API is mostly just keyless verifier and the verify claims here. It's supposed to be fairly simple to use for someone that doesn't want to get into the guts. But if you want to, you can You can create a Recore client or a Fulcio client, and you can do actions on those. So if you do a Recore client, you can get an entry, search for entries, and put entries. Similar with the Fulcio client. You can sign a certificate request. If you want to create a certificate request, you have to create it from a public key, an ID token, which is an OIDC ID token, and a proof of possession, which is a signature over the ID token. These clients are customizable. The default goes to Recore and Fulcio Prod, but the builder has a bunch of options. You can set the server URL, and this is just like a HTTP config. You can set timeouts and stuff like that. Similar to the Recore thing, you can set a Fulcio client with, again, the URL, the server, and a bunch of like config options. There's also an OIDC client, which helps us talk to DEX. That's the right one. What is it called? Oh, okay. So there's, right. There is a web OIDC client, which talks to DEX, and then there's currently this GitHub OIDC client, which will pull GitHub credentials from during like a workflow run. That's mostly it. So we can try to do a GitHub thing and builder, and then we can get a client that you really want to plug this all into a signer. You can do a keyless signer, builder, the raw builder, and then you can add in the OIDC client, Fulcio client, and a Recore client. And these all kind of also require verifiers. And verifiers use tough metadata to verify signatures and whatnot. Right now, there is no tough client for Java. So if there's anyone on this call that really likes tough and Java, we could use help. We are hoping to have a kind of early alpha release. Yeah, tough for J. Early alpha release with kind of all the tough metadata baked in the next few weeks. I think once we get people back from vacation, Mark Atwood, there's one in Rust. Yeah, I mean, part of the reason we're writing these language clients is people don't, apparently language ecosystem, I just use the JPEG for Rusty. You know, initially I was hoping we could just wrap cosign from all the language clients, but pulling in an arbitrary binary seems to be like a non-starter for a lot of people. So here we are with these clients. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling there, but that's mostly the demo. So if there's any questions about this, if you want to help, summer is a great time to help because one of us is always on vacation. You have PRs lying around. Yeah.
Awesome. There's a couple of questions from Chinath. May have been before you showed the Fulcio API, but I'll ask them and see if there's anything you can add. It says, can we spin up our own Fulcio server? And was that a Fulcio you're using? Was it by Sigstore?
Yeah, so the default builder just connects to fulcio.sigstore.dev. But yeah, you can then go and make, you know, you can do sets of URL and HTTPS, like myfulcio.com or something. I don't know. The thing is, when you do, if you do something like that, oh, this one's a URI. If you do something like that, when you actually build a keyless signer, so let's try, builder, and you create a full seal client and you use your full seal client here, you have to also provide a full seal verifier, which when you request a certificate, it verifies that the SET is valid, which means, your certificate was potentially written to a transparency log. And it needs to verify that the cert chain goes up to the root of trust defined in the verifier. Let's see. Check. So full seal verifier requires the full seal root and a certificate transparency front end public key. The full seal root is to verify the certificate chain. The certificate transparency key is to verify that the entry in, or the promise of an entry in the transparency log is valid. Those two values usually come from the tough root. Thank you. Where is to find the document about this? Sorry, I can't actually see the chat anywhere. So let me stop sharing and go to the chat. Can we pull up our on full seal server? Is there an implementation in the Sigstore Maven plugin? So Eric, is that question about tough? Right now, we don't have like a tough client in any of the Java things. So I'm not even sure the Sigstore Maven plugin is doing verification of these values yet. The goal is once we release this, we will use it in the clients. Another ask, if someone likes developing Gradle plugins, I have some work for you. Yeah, so there's no tough implementation in Java. So there's that. There's a Gradle work. Question about FullCO. Is there some documentation about this? Sigstore website shows FullCO is not ready.
Maybe for that one, I'm gonna, is Lisa on the call? I know Lisa's been looking at the docs and can speak to this a little, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
Sure. Yeah, we're doing a lot of work on the FullCO docs and just Sigstore docs in general. If there is something in particular that you're looking for, feel free to raise an issue. It's right now it's under Sigstore website, but it's going to be Sigstore/docs, and I'll put the link in the chat here. But we're definitely working on a lot and working on migrating that over.
Yeah, so I mean, I would assume if you're using your own FullCO, you have to find a way to distribute your root of trust. By default, none of the tools will verify your custom FullCO certificates. So if you're publishing something publicly, I would try to at least also publish to the public good infrastructure if you need something. Yeah. Okay, I'm done. If there's any more questions.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot for letting me push you to show this to us early, so we get to see something cutting edge. What are the plans in general for like a 1.0 release, and maybe if you can talk about the relationship with Sigstore Maven?
So I don't think we'll do a 1.0 before Sigstore's GA. We'll just have 0.1.0. And then we can use it in Sigstore, Maven, and Gradle. There is no Sigstore Gradle right now, or at least there's none that I'm aware of. Sigstore Maven is being worked on. And that actually came first. So a lot of this code initially came from there to communicate with the infrastructure. But yeah, so now here's just a common library for all the tooling to use. And if a long time ago, someone who maintains JReleaser asked if there's any Java 6 or tooling. We want to get maybe like a Jenkins integration. Any tooling written in Java, we hope to be able to use this. we do have a lot of dependencies, and I think we can trim those down a bit. Yeah, no one likes a library that pulls in 1,000 things, but that's what we do right now, just to get started. Yeah, so Sigstore Maven doesn't use it right now, and we wanted to, and I hope we will.
Great. And yeah, let us know if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I'll mention, yeah, Wednesdays is when Apu and the rest of the gang are meeting for Sigstore Java. So if anyone wants to get involved, yeah, do please join them. You can check it out in the Sigstore calendar. Right, thanks very much. I'm not seeing any burning questions anymore. So from Apu, we'll go to a user perspective of Sigstore with ohmyposh.dev from Jan W.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Shall I just, jump in head first? Maybe introduce ohmyposh first so people know what it's about. That might be a good idea. Let me see if I can quickly share my screen or a window at least. Oh, great. I'll have to restart. Nice. Laptop. Oh,
Yeah,
there you go.
Go ahead and start with an intro of yourself, maybe how you came across Sigstore, and then get into ohmyposh.
Let me quickly just already... I'll restart in a minute because otherwise I can't share my screen. That's going to be rather annoying. So, okay, first things first, I'll do the intro. Then I'll reboot my browser and I'll join back in. ohmyposh, and I'll show it in a minute, is actually a cross-shell / platform prompt teaming utility. So it's a CLI tool that allows you to have the same prompt experience in any terminal shell that you have wherever you work, which is rather interesting rather than always having that custom implementation. It also abstracts everything away from the user, so you don't need to know the nitty-gritty details. We can just do a configuration and you have the styling, the look and feel that you want. So I'm the creator and maintainer of the tool. I've been doing so for 6 years. After hours, obviously, as a pet project for myself. That kind of blew up because it seems that my needs were also other people's needs, and based on a lot of input, that kind of grew a bit out of hand, to be honest. But it was all in all a very enjoyable and a very interesting experience for me. During working hours, I'm an engineering manager at Nike here in Belgium. That's where I live. That's what I do. Now, what's the issue and how did Sigstore came into the picture? Ever since the beginning of time, when we started, or at least when I started doing cross-platform work, distributing a binary. Originally, the project started as a PowerShell version. So it had nothing to do with being cross-platform or whatnot, and also, worked really well in the ecosystem. But like roughly 2 years ago, I actually made it so that it is cross-platform. It was ported to Golang that produces a single binary to use everywhere, right? And the problem is mainly on Windows, because in order to get information fast, you need to understand that people press enter. They would love to see their prompt rendered ASAP as soon as the command is executed. So any delay is really annoying from a user perspective. So to speed up a lot of things, we also sort of do a lot of hacking under the hood, which Windows always flags as malware because we read from the registry, we read from config files. There's a lot of things we do to go around, calling just other binaries because that only adds time to the process. And we're really talking milliseconds here that people, if you run in 500 milliseconds, that's really slow. People really notice that. So you want to keep it under 100 milliseconds, ideally, meaning we find ways around, calling just simple binaries for a lot of things. And Windows doesn't like that. So Defender always comes and complains, says, what is this tool? What are you doing? So it blocks the execution, not just isolates it. Defender also has a nasty habit of making it run very, very slow. So we see you, we got you, but we'll annoy you. That's what it does. And looking at it from an open source point of view as a maintainer, the only solution that I noticed at the time was to get a code signing certificate, which also meant I needed to, out of pocket pay 400 to 500 euros a year just to get a certificate from a party that was at least somehow trustworthy, because it's really weird how that whole industry is, that should be built around the chain of trust, contains a lot of really seemingly shady companies to actually get something from, which is awkward and not really understandable. So it's not just the money, it's the whole ecosystem didn't really feel comfortable in doing that. And people pointed me to Sigstore, said, look, there's this really cool initiative that allows you to also sign your binaries. Maybe that would be interesting to do. So I read up on it, I looked at it, said, hey, this actually could at least provide a certain level of confidence to people. If I provide the public certificate in the repository, they can download the binary and at least validate whatever they got is what comes from me and not someone else, right? The main challenge is obviously that this doesn't solve anything from an admin perspective on Windows, because there's no way that this can be added as a sort of level of trust for Defender. It just still ignores you. Doesn't really matter. Yeah, indeed, it's all about the money. It doesn't really matter, right? So the change in the end is nothing. So fortunately, thanks to my privileges as a Microsoft MVP, I was able to get a code signing certificate for free now, I think roughly a month ago. Very, very painful process, to be honest, if you're an individual and not a company. But so there's a lot that can be improved in that area. That's also how we got talking. Okay, so why am I using this? Because apparently I'm either rather weird in the ecosystem for doing this, or I have a use case that we need to explore a bit further. Because in the ideal situation, what we have is that, looking at it from an open source maintainer point of view, if we have a system where we can easily sign based on some level of trust that can also be integrated with the Microsoft ecosystem, that could be really, really interesting to have. For example, I have my public certificate on my profile, but whether that's on repo level or profile, that's the detail. But it would be nice if I could get prompted as a user, if I install this, do I trust Jan de Dobbeleer? This is his profile on GitHub. Yeah, stack, click it, and then, automatically Defender can trust anything that is signed with my certificate, for example, right? But that doesn't exist today. Such functionality isn't there. There's no way to link my identity to, or at least my GitHub identity to the work that I do on whatever you download on your machine. And I'm definitely not the only person with that challenge, but nowadays I guess a lot of people just buy or pay for a code signing certificate. And that was my main use case specifically for using Sigstore. And I'd love to see this evolve into something that would also be able to support open source maintainers, because in all honesty, there is a huge gap there today. It's not a very scalable model. It's also a bit of fake trust, because in all honesty, all I needed to do for myself was I need to know one person that was able to sign for me and validate my identity, and I'd be good to go, which is also rather weird, because from a user perspective, there's no way that you really know that, my name is actually who I am in real life, or that there's a relationship between, that certificate and then whatever you downloaded and my identity on GitHub or online or anywhere else. So definitely room for disruption, I'd say. That was, I guess that sums it up mostly. That's why I came here today.
Great. And did you want to show any more on my Passion reboot? Or?
Yeah, I could do that. Let me just quickly quit here, see if I can rejoin, and let me quickly copy paste the meeting link. That will work easy. Be right back.
Yeah, great. And yeah, while we're waiting for Jan, let me know if folks have any other topics they want to cover. And also we're looking for speakers for demos and discussion for the upcoming sessions. The next one will be on the 16th of August. So if you want to speak at that and show something, or if you want to see something from someone else in the ecosystem, please let me know, and we'll reach out and schedule some things there. And yeah, just a other general reminder, we'll be looking to follow up with speakers and see about getting a a bit of a write-up or a blog post as well, just as another signpost to help people find materials, because yeah, we hear a lot about people who are looking for various ways to use Sigstore in the different language communities. So we're keen to put out not just the videos for this, but also some write-ups with links to repos and things like that. Any questions? Oh, wait, you're back.
Yeah, I was already back. It went rather smoothly, to be honest. It's a pretty fast new machine, so that's good.
Great, can you share?
Let me quickly share. There we go. All right. I think you should be able to see my screen, right?
Yeah,
all right. So this is the website of my Posh. You can see a little prompt there. That's what it does. That's what it generates out of the box for you without any configuration, just installation and go. Configuration for the tool is rather straightforward because you can choose any format and then just define how it should render, and it's based on the principle of blocks, and a block is just a combination of multiple segments that you can position anywhere on your, not screen, but in your prompt. Say this block needs to go to the left, then I want to have a right line block space, and then I want to have another additional block, and you can build anything that you want. All of this was basically based upon 6 years of working with people, understanding their needs, not just mine, and then figuring out how to make this accessible for everybody. And then if you put all of these things together, you can build stuff like, where is it? Okay, here. So these are examples of everything that you could build if you know OMyZSH, which obviously inspired a lot of this initially. And there's other tools out there, but it goes from simple text to Powerline to really, really crazy and a lot of context and way too bloated for my taste. But you know, this caters to everybody, I guess. That's what it does. So you have, if you look at the segments, a ton of information that you can actually display, from Go, Java, all different language versions, to environmental context, to even your blood sugar level. We have the weathers in there. You could even, this is pretty exotic, watch the status of your home brewery. So if you're brewing beer, you can also see it in your prompt just to follow up on it. We have Strava integration to make sure that you do not only code, but also stay fit while you're at it. All of these things are there, and just keeps expanding and blowing up. That's all my Posh. And in reality, let me see if I can share another screen. This is my terminal. There we go. So this is what it looks like in real life. Just you know, you can change your folder and it will all just automatically render everything pretty seamlessly and fast. So Git context was obviously the main use case, but there's tons of other things and information you can display. That's what I built, and that's what people apparently seem to enjoy. And that's where I could really use your help in making sure not just me, but a lot of maintainers out in the world also can cater to Windows users and admins without spending a lot of money and losing a lot of patience in the process.
And you talked about the integration earlier, and do you provide, like, is there a verify step for users as such to like manually at all?
Yeah. So that's something I still need to add to the documentation. That's on me. So it's actually rather straightforward if you have the public certificate to do that verification really easily, but obviously it requires you to also install cosign, right, on your machine, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the only thing you need to do. But then you could also validate it. Yeah, that would be possible. That is a to-do on my list. I'll take a note of that because I keep forgetting it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great to see. And actually, maybe, I don't know if in the future there's other potential Sigstore integrations, or we can automatically check what things you're using are signed or something like that. I don't know what potential there is, but yeah, it's pretty neat. Any questions, comments from folks? Okay, nothing for today, but yeah, find folks in the Sigstore channel. But yeah, no, thank you very much for that. Okay, so that brings us to any other business. So if anybody has anything they want to ask about, Sigstore questions, or call our attention to anything, now's your chance. Okay, not hearing anything. Yeah, I'd like to thank all the speakers who were able to join us today and show us all the different work in the Sigstore ecosystem. Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who joined us. And yeah, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Thank you. Goodbye.